Okay, let's unpack this. Picture the scene. Munich, 1972. The Olympics are in full swing, a vibrant festival of global athleticism.
Yeah, exactly the image they wanted to project.
Yeah.
Unity sport.
Right. Now imagine the Olympic Press Center, this hub for journalists from all over, and its windows are looking right out over the Olympic Village.
A prime view.
But on the morning of September 5th, that view, well, it became something else entirely. Horrifying.
Yeah. One of those buildings, suddenly, it's the focal point. Israeli athletes inside held hostage.
It's just such a jarring intrusion. How did that terror just rip through the whole festive atmosphere of the games?
Well, what's really compelling as we get into this is our source material. We're not looking back years later with all the analysis done. No, we have a news report that was actually filed on September 5th, right there on the ground.
Wow. Okay. So it's immediate.
Totally immediate. It's raw. It captures those first tremors of shock, the uncertainty. It's almost like we're there with the reporter trying to figure out what's happening in real time.
Right. So for this deep dive, we're really getting those initial unfiltered reactions. Our goal is to understand that first wave of information and, maybe more importantly, what wasn't known yet.
The gaps.
Yeah, the gaps. And just how profoundly this act of terror flipped the whole script on the Olympics. How did this global party basically turn into, well, a scene of anxiety and fear, all through this one eyewitness report?
So let's start right there with that initial shock. The reporter's view from the press center, seeing that building under siege, that contrast must have been, well, stark.
Stark doesn't even cover it, does it? You've got this symbol of peace and competition right next to violence, and the report talks about the immediate emotions.
Yeah, what does it say?
Anger, bitterness, rage. Those are the words used for everyone the reporter spoke to. What does that tell you, that immediate outpouring? About the Olympic ideal, maybe?
Well, it just rips away that feeling of safety, doesn't it? That idea that the Olympics are somehow separate, protected from the world's conflict.
And totally exposed.
Yeah, expose that vulnerability.
Yeah.
And the report mentions how the crowds reacted physically. They didn't stay at the stadiums.
No, they moved. Hundreds, it says, then thousands. Just abandoned the sporting events to go and watch the crisis unfold at the village.
Think about that image. People turning away from the games to watch this. It tells you everything about where the real gravity was, right?
It really does. The sports just felt insignificant, I guess, in that moment. The human drama took over completely.
But, there's this other detail.
What's that?
That elsewhere in the Olympic grounds, some training actually continued, as if nothing was happening.
That's surreal. How do you even process that? People are training while hostages are being held.
It highlights that kind of fragmented reality of a crisis, maybe. It's hard to immediately grasp the enormity, so some parts of life just try to keep going.
Yeah, compartmentalizing, maybe?
Maybe. But the reporter is clear. The overall atmosphere was completely spoiled. The sports festival became oppressive and anxious. That's the real takeaway.
Okay, so the report then brings in someone who was right there early on, an eyewitness, just identified as Mr. U.
Right, a first-hand account. And his story starts pretty grimly.
Yeah, the timeline. He gets a call at 5:45 in the morning from the Israeli mission.
And the news is just devastating.
Instantly. Israeli wrestler Moshe Weinberg murdered by Arab terror. That's the term used right away. Imagine getting that call inside the Olympic Village.
The shock. And that immediate label, Arab terror, tells you how quickly lines were drawn, even with limited information, based on the existing tensions.
Absolutely. So Mr. Yu goes to the Israeli delegation quarters. What does he find?
Police barricades.
Yeah.
Things are already locked down. And then he sees Weinberg's body being moved.
Oh, wow. The report details that.
Yeah, it does. First into a civilian ambulance, then transferred to a military one. And he mentions seeing blood.
That's incredibly visceral. It just cuts through any abstraction, doesn't it? Puts the human cost right there.
Exactly. It's not just a news item. It's brutal reality. And he relays what he knew then. Several other Israeli athletes captured in that first block.
By terrorists of Arab terror in Israel. Again, that specific phrasing. So the picture forming is targeted attack, murder, multiple hostages.
Right. But it's still early. Information is flying around. What does that chaos, that potential for missing pieces, tell us about reporting in a crisis like this?
Well, it shows how narratives form quickly. Maybe before all the facts are in, there's bound to be confusion, maybe even misinformation spreading in those first hours.
Definitely. And what's really striking is that Mr. Yu, this eyewitness, immediately voices criticism about security.
Yeah, that jumped out at me too. He says pretty bluntly, I think the German police didn't do a good job because we knew that something like this can happen.
We knew. That's a powerful statement coming from someone inside the delegation right in the immediate aftermath.
It really is. It suggests this wasn't totally out of the blue for everyone there. He even talks about
Rumors of what?
prior warnings, that there was talk, apparently, within the Israeli and Jewish communities there about a potential demonstration or something, but that maybe it wasn't taken seriously.
So whispers beforehand. But then he says he didn't get a warning himself.
Exactly. Which raises all sorts of questions, doesn't it? If there were warnings, who knew? How serious were they considered? Was the information shared properly?
It points to potential gaps, big time. Intelligence, communication, risk assessment.
Yeah.
Something wasn't working right, at least according to him.
Yeah. And that immediate concern about security feels very different from the official line we hear next in the report.
Right, the International Olympic Committee, an IOC representative, makes a statement.
And their decision,
And
initially.
the game should continue.
Wow. Just carry on. Despite the murder, the hostages, the siege.
That was the initial stance. The report notes the representative was hesitant when asked if that could change, though. You can sense the pressure, the uncertainty they must have been under.
I can only imagine. But still, continue. What could have been the thinking there?
Well, you could speculate. Maybe trying to not give in to terror. Uphold the Olympic spirit. Avoid the massive disruption. It's complex.
I guess. But it feels jarring.
It does. Though, to be fair, the rep does express deep sorrow for what happened for the athletes killed. They acknowledge the human tragedy.
Okay, that's important. And then there's this interesting bit about how they frame it.
How so?
The IOC rep says the situation transcends the Olympic leisure, maybe means level or sphere, and reaches the highest political plan. That it's about governments talking now.
Ah, okay. So they're sort of elevating it, saying, this is bigger than just us, bigger than sport. This is geopolitics now.
Exactly. What does that move suggest? Is it passing the buck, or is it acknowledging the reality of it?
Probably a bit of both. I mean, it was fundamentally a political act playing out on their stage. They were recognizing they couldn't solve it alone. The heads of state needed to be involved.
Yeah, that makes sense. It was way beyond a typical sporting incident. So, thinking about this whole immediate report, what are the key things listeners should really take away from this deep dive?
Well, first, just how suddenly that celebratory spirit, that Olympic ideal, could be completely shattered, gone in an instant.
Yeah, the fragility of it. And then there's the raw emotion, the grief, the anger coming through so clearly in those first accounts.
Definitely. Plus, those immediate questions about security. The feeling, at least from some, that maybe this could have been anticipated or handled differently, that wasn't just hindsight. It was there from the start.
Right. And finally, that initial, maybe confusing reaction from the IOC, trying to balance the games with this unfolding tragedy.
So it's this snapshot, isn't it? Limited information, intense emotion, immediate reactions. It really makes you think.
What's that?
Just how does this kind of real-time perspective, with all its gaps and raw feelings, shape how we understand a huge historical event like Munich 72 compared to, the polished accounts written years later?
That's a really good question. Does seeing it unfold like this, through the eyes of people experiencing it right then, change the impact?
I think it has to. And leaves you wondering, what does this whole tragic episode tell us about how vulnerable even these massive, symbolic global events are to political violence? Even something meant to unify can become a target.
A sobering thought, definitely. Something to chew on long after we finish here.